REL Pacific is one of 10 regional educational laboratories, often referred to as RELs, which are funded by the U.S. Department of Education's Institute of Education Sciences.
As the COVID-19 crisis has unfolded, education systems have been faced with multiple challenges: logistical, social and emotional, and financial. Systems across the globe, including in the U.S.-affiliated Pacific jurisdictions, have risen to these challenges in a number of different ways, depending on their unique systems, context, strengths, and challenges. This video provides a snapshot of some of the ways stakeholders in the Pacific region are addressing the COVID-19 pandemic in their jurisdictions.
So first and foremost, the idea behind that is protecting our environment so the virus does not, if at all possible, land on this island. The health of our students, our employees, and the college community was paramount. It was front and center. If people were not healthy, whatever we do does not mean anything. We had to be healthy. For the faculty, we have a program where we provide a laptop for the faculty. We knew that they're aging, and then we need to fast track the renewal. Some have changed their laptop, so that's first. And second, we wanted to make sure they have connectivity. They don't have to move on the campus. Wherever they were, there was connectivity. That's on the part of the faculty. And then we needed to find out when the student returned on the first day of class, who has access to gadgets, smartphone, tablet, or a laptop, or even a desktop at home. And if they do, who has connectivity where they're at? If we eventually will reach shelter in place or a lockdown, can you have access? The idea behind maintaining good health is very important. And that is not so strange in Palau, because early on when we became independent 27 years ago, public health was front and center. If you want to reduce the cost of taking care of people, you need to focus on public health.
Because priority right now is to provide the learning opportunities back to the students. Because from March until now, there hasn't been any. The students are not receiving anything. So our main focus right now is to provide the learning back to the students.
And we had to figure out how to keep our students safe and how we could provide equity for finishing out our semester, because we have students in 4 different states and each state is very different. So we had Coast Ride, Pohnpei, where we have residence halls, Chug, and then Yap, where we also have a residence hall on our Fisheries and Maritime Institute campus. And so it was really a challenge to figure out how to make sure that all of these students in very different conditions could fairly complete their semester and have access and remain safe and healthy.
The advantage that what we did is we acted proactively. We did not simply react. So at a very early stage, although there is no case of PUIs or positive person on island, we decided to simulate a almost real situation. What if we have a positive case or a PUI on island? So like, for example, at the national campus, we closed the campus. We created a bubble. We call that restricted community. As what the president mentioned, we have staff who are staying inside the bubble 24/7 with the student. Nobody goes in, nobody goes out, and we only open up that bubble sometimes in April when things are quite okay. Well, the good thing is the college has an emergency plan that guided us on what to do. And that plan grew up as we experienced the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. We tried to establish communication with the parents who are very concerned about their kids, and basically all administrators are available 24/7.
There's a group we have here that I refer to as the Ed Heads. So it's the president of UOG, the president of Guam Community College, and the superintendent of public instruction, our head of our Department of Education. The three of us meet with some regularity, and we often meet with the governor and the lieutenant governor. So the three of us agreed to try to persuade the governor to use her portion of the CARES Act money that was earmarked just for education, to ask her to use that to try to improve the digital connectivity all over Guam. Not just for any of our individual needs, but our argument was that if we could improve internet connection and capacity and technological access, that this would be good for Guam in many, many ways, for future industries, for educational opportunities, for all kinds of things. So I'm happy to say that she went along with that proposal, and so arranged for educational discounts to have access to the internet. We've added a lot of Wi-Fi capacity and cabling capacity all over Guam, so that's been really important. We converted a classroom on campus into a call center, completely equipped it with printers and phones. We got the phone company to donate phones. We set up everything, food and bathrooms and everything to set up for a large call center, and that's still running. It's still on the campus. It's still entirely a UOG function.
The teachers, they continue their learnings, their lesson plans and their practices that go along with their lessons, up all the way to the end of the school year, which is supposed to be happen. So, and then we said, okay, you can collect all of those and put them into one whole school year learning package, start from day one all the way to when it's supposed to be closed. So we can have a learning package for another school year set aside and ready to be implemented. So that's what they've been doing in the schools. They've been doing their learning packages in the schools, and principals are monitoring their works, as well as we're trying to come up with all of these so to make it more easier for us to just focus on the learning of the students.
It's important, particularly in Micronesia, this great region of Micronesia, that there's a very important element of face-to-face interaction in every way, and not least of which is in education. So the key elements of that include asynchronous recorded lectures and other materials that students can see at any time, and then that combined with structured face-to-face time, making sure that there are more opportunities for written comment, so to use sort of chat rooms and so on, and to expect students to participate that way. That all seems to be important. So some nice tips on how to sort of help faculty think about what kinds of things were you doing in the classroom. Some of those you can just pick up and move directly into this format, but here's a whole group of ones that don't work. And so now what can you do that sort of captures what you were trying to do and those that don't work? So I think that's been important too. So you sort of never want to do it if it's possible to be face-to-face, because the face-to-face is so much more important in our cultures regionally than it is in many others. We need to minimize the face-to-face, but we also need to make sure that the face-to-face has real value. And we've talked in terms of, every face-to-face interaction is a risk. And so we want to make sure that whatever we're doing is worth the risk. And also to reduce the time. So if we can spend half an hour face-to-face doing something that's really valuable face-to-face, that's way better than an hour and a half of breathing in the same room, even if you're 6 feet apart, even if you're wearing masks. There's still extra risk in that. So try to cut down on those. Have students do things ahead of time that they then bring to the face-to-face interaction, and make that more valuable and meaty.
So we explained that some of the classes will be traditional face-to-face, with every taking into consideration the recommendation from the Ministry of Health, and the Emergency Operations Center from health. Those we're going to follow for those few classes that will be meeting face-to-face. Why do we have some classes that will meet face-to-face? There's only so much you can do for clinical experiences in nursing and in welding and in fixing a carburetor or taking a lower unit for a small out for the engine or for a mixing a concrete or the whole works. Those psychomotor type activities. And then we also told them that a good number of classes will be online, and then we define what they were. So we, in that memorandum that everybody knows, it's on our websites, we talked about the synchronous learning and asynchronous, and then we define what they were and how the college defined it.
The issue about testing and tracing and how do we handle any kind of further opening of the campus is an issue. So we have a small guest house that belongs to the Marine Laboratory, and so we converted that into an isolation kind of so right now we have 17 contact tracers in Guam. You know, there is still an issue of what happens when we have an outbreak and how good is the contact tracing. So one recent innovation is we have sign-in sheets in every place, every classroom, every office space, so people can sign in, put their cell phone number when they came and when they left, so that we can do a better job of contact tracing. It allow our faculty to decide on their own whether they wanted to be all online, a hybrid of face-to-face and online, or entirely face-to-face.
Students will be coming into the school campuses and doing their learning in the classrooms. Pi clusters. What do I mean by pi clusters is because of the social distancing, it will be around maximum of 10 to 16 students within each classroom. So we cluster out the students from grade 1 to grade 4 in the morning, and grade 5, 5th to 8 in the afternoon for the primary elementary schools. As for the EC, the enrollment limits at 15, so each day regular, they can always go into their classroom. And as for the high schools, they have, because they have a huge population on our island, so it will be by grade level per day.
I think the challenges that the teachers are facing now is getting used to the new normal that we'll be getting into. I think the main challenge that they will face is getting used to using the technical aspect of the learning process. Most of them are not used to this online setting, so they're trying to, get familiarized with what they need to familiarize themselves with in order to be prepared to deliver the lessons to the students. I think for the students, the biggest challenge will be the use of internet. Most of the students are not familiar with online learning. This is going to be first time for them, so it will take us a little while, not a little while, but maybe a little longer time for them to get used to the new way of learning. We tend to want to work together on so many things. Our culture calls for us to have, collective thinking when it comes to problems that we face. So that's a strength that I think will help us get through this pandemic, mainly because we want everybody to be involved in the learning process for our kids. And most of the parents, our islands are small, so it's a small world for us. This problem, everybody understands that it's affecting the lives of everybody. And so the ability for us to get through to the parents and the community elders and everybody, I believe will help us.
One of the things, the realization that we are small and we're born into set of families and a culture, and then they take care of us when we're born. We participate in taking for others while we're alive, and then when we die, we know that they will take care of us, and then our loved ones when we depart on this. That is always in the minds of the people. It is this community that will shelter you, They will feed you. They will provide you safety net. And then, God forbid, if something happens to you, and then you have to depart this early place, people will be there. The island communities believe that when you go fishing and you have a good catch, time to share. And I think you need to we also a firm believer, you take care of yourself. That's why Palawans really understand when they get on the plane and they said, in case of emergency, help yourself before you help others. That's innate in our culture. You have to be strong in order to help others.
Say that that's, as you said, that's just the culture of the Pacific Islands, is that that's how it's always been. The chief of the village or the traditional leader says this is what needs to be done, and everybody just works together and gets it done. And I think that's a real strength, especially in times like this, because we say this needs to happen, and everybody works together. They don't really question, well, why does it have to happen? You know, we said it does. There's good reasons for it. Just another story maybe is that I noticed that when faculty were teaching this summer, they set up their own groups within our learning management system for support for each other. So if one was having a difficulty, they'd get together in this group and share their experience, and someone would have a solution for them. So, and they did that on their own too. It's a really strong community, and you know, everybody is always there. Even our students, when they're in face-to-face, they prefer the group work. That's how they learn. They learn as a family. And that's what we try to tell them, that, you know, this college is their family, and we will take care of them, and we'll help, you know, we'll work together to make things happen like this.
It's basically grounded on the concept of we care, because this is not only within the college community, but even extended to the outside community.
For us, our biggest strength is our human resources. For now, what we're doing is we're trying to educate everybody about the situation that we're currently in. We're using our own people, our own specialists over here, to translate materials from the CDC and WHO to help educate people about the dangers of not complying with the guidelines that we already received from our external partners, mainly the CDC, WHO, UNICEF, and IOM, and all the other guys that are here on the island trying to help us prepare for the pandemic.
American Samoa, University of Guam, GCC Palau, Northern Marianas, and Marshall Islands, and us. We've been meeting every 2 weeks to share stories and information, and again, it's that community of caring and sharing.
One of my observations that I think it helped us transition rapidly is that about 2 years ago, or even before, we started asking ourselves, how can we take this personal face-to-face experience and bring it online? So we've been experimenting with things, piloting different things. And so when we said we needed to go online, that if we have these things, we're like basically ready to go. But now I'm asking myself and looking around, how can we make this online experience personal?
The pandemic will have a significant effect on the way the students learn. For us in Pohnpei, I believe it will significantly affect how they learn things, because of the cut down on the number of hours they'll be facing the teachers in the classroom. Because for most of our students are visual learners. They learn things when they see the instruction. They're not used to this new way of doing instruction, whereby we will be using internet and other things. So it will have an effect on them, but like I said, we don't have any other choice besides what we already planned for them.
Trying to have student focus groups and hear from our students about their lives and what's going on. And, you know, just make education easier for them and their access easier. So that, I think that might be one lesson we could have learned, or we have learned from the online.
So I do think that this does give us a lot of opportunities to take advantage of the internet connectivity. And all of Micronesia has been getting really high quality cabling laid down. And so Guam is now a hub in the Pacific. And so we just have a new one coming from Sydney to Tokyo running through Guam. And so we're really, really well connected. And all of the experience of online teaching is going to improve. You know, the effect of this will be a general improvement in pedagogy, I think, across the board. So, so I'm hopeful that that will be an improvement.
The teachers adapt in combining all their lessons from day one all the way to the end of the school year to prepare them for next year. Because mostly the students, when they're done with their lesson, they throw away their lessons. But in doing that, they try to combine all their lessons from day one. So the idea of collecting and putting all of those lessons together, I like that idea that they adapted to this because of this changing in. So that's the lesson that I learned, and I like the way the teachers are using that as preparation for next school year.
Because the world is so mobile and too interconnected, I think we need to be on guard all the time. But I think from this day forward, we have to be committed. It'll be one of those checklists. You know, those checklists for maintenance, lock the door, mop the floor, everything. And now it will be sanitize the doorknob with a 70% alcohol will be one of those facts that they need to check. Because of what's happening, not just for the college, for the nation, waterborne diseases and other viruses and flu, I mean, the incidence of those have really gone down, which goes to prove that if you take care of your environment, you take care of your health, you take care of a lot of more issues in the community.
To learn more about REL Pacific's work, visit our website